Hello, I'm Paul Harvey-Brooks. I've been passionate about plants, gardens and landscapes since I can remember as a small child. That is a very magical space. Welcome to Wales. I'm going to be showing you some of the most dramatic landscapes, including Snowdonia National Park here in North Wales and one of the most important gardens in the entire United Kingdom. Well, what a treat. This morning I am at one of the most important gardens in the United Kingdom. It's Bodnant in the Conwy Valley in North Wales, and I'm joined by Donna Goodman, who is absolutely passionate about the landscape, about plants. She's a local guide and she's going to be showing me some of the treasures that we'll be seeing today.
Come with me, I want to show you my favourite tree.
Okay.
It's a real beaut. It's a sweet chestnut, but it's unusual.
Oh.
This is an old girl.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow.
So this is a fantastic example of layering, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I love that as well because we don't often, thanks to grazing, see trees doing that.
Doing this,
Yeah.
the young stuff, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You have the feeling that, you know, given the free rein, it could just march across the whole garden.
Yeah. I have seen this kind of thing in Scotland where there's no grazing, and so on estate gardens, so the tree does that drop like here.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've not seen one literally in somebody's garden. That really is the most impressive thing.
And it's been fenced around it so that children can't do what children want to do, which is climb it. I mean, even I want to climb that.
That
like...
is very inviting. I'd go up there. You tend to forget that even across geographically the British Isles, the weather and temperature change, and of course things like the Gulf Stream, really have a huge impact on plants.
Absolutely, yeah. And this garden has got little pockets where it's, you know, they can grow all sorts of things. So for example, there are bananas and all sorts of exotics in the little garden over there. Which we can go and have a look at.
Yeah. It actually always does amaze me how the kind of microclimates and the things that you can grow. And it's one of the things I love about gardeners is they seem always to want to push the boundaries of possibility with what they can put in their gardens.
It's true.
Oh wow, that is quite a view.
Isn't it stunning? Never get bored of it.
And these wisterias must be ancient.
Ancient. I mean, look at the pruning that's gone on. It's just about to flower as well.
I know, it really is quite stunning. You know, one of the most incredible things about Bodnant is not just the design, but the sheer volume of plants that were collected and brought here for the first time. So there are a lot of different plant hunters like George Forrest and others who came here financed by Lord Aberconway and bringing plants. And these viburnums, most of the viburnums we have, are thanks to those early collections. And this one is just the most incredible example of a really good garden plant. And imagine in the 19th century visiting and seeing that for the first time. Well, this really is such a special garden because not only have you got those kind of formal bits that you imagine of a large house that we've been looking at, but I love these woodland glades, and for me they're reminiscent of the three very important plant collectors that the various Lord Aberconways kind of financed and sometimes went on trips to bring plants back. And most of the rhododendrons and azaleas that are here, I think, form the basis of most of the collections that we have. And these are largely thanks to George Forrest, who travelled off to China. I mean, imagine in the 19th century going to China and then bringing back tiny bits of plants. For me, it's just incredible.
It must have been an adventure, eh? And did you know there are 350 hybrids from
Wow.
that one trip in Bodnant?
Well, I mean,
More than 350.
I mean, when you look, it's not a surprise, but I did not know that. Thank you.
I really love Bodnant. It is one of my favourite places. One of the things I really like about it is the native flora interspersed amongst the introduced. You know, you see the old wood anemone, you'll see bluebells, woodruff.
Yeah, that makes me laugh because I know this is a Scandinavian native, and I didn't think it had made its way to the British Isles as a native plant. So that's quite interesting. I'm gonna take your word for it. Do you eat it?
I put it in orange juice and let it steep overnight, and it has the most amazing. It changes the flavour of orange juice.
But I put it in salads and then I dry it and I keep it for winter and I put it with roast potatoes because it is the most delicious flavour.
It's quite sweet, isn't it?
It is quite sweet. This time of year it's sweet, and then when it's dried it takes on a really kind of like celery type flavour. It is quite incredible. And then in front of us, because I love the kind of stories of plants and I love how we garden with them, but in front of us is hosta as we know it now. That's its Latin name. But when that was first introduced from Japan, the plant introducers thought that this could be an edible plant. And you can eat it, you can harvest it like asparagus early in the year. And it first came to us with the name Funkia. And I think it is rather funky, but of course now we know it as hosta and we can't eat it like that.
He wanted a building of architectural interest and he'd admired it for a long time. But he didn't want to rebuild it there. He wanted to rebuild it so that you could see it face on from the house.
Like a folly.
Well, so you could see it from the house actually.
Yeah.
But his wife, Lady Aberconway, was absolutely against the idea because she thought it'd spoil the view. And they had to bring in the head gardener as the sort of like the diplomat, really.
Yeah.
And he suggested to build it there with a canal in front of it for the reflections so that he could see his mill twice.
Yeah.
And the view wouldn't be spoilt. And at the end of the day, everybody was happy.
I mean, to me, that's incredible because this is one of the most iconic images in kind of garden design.
It is, yeah.
Throughout the United Kingdom, worldwide, people know that image. It's just a perfect symmetry of like clipped hedges, herbaceous borders, a reflecting canal, and then that kind of triple framed building. And to now learn that that is by accident, given it's been interpreted and recreated in so many places, just incredible. I just feel like I need to get closer to it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
It's breathtaking, the scale of like endeavour to make a garden like this. I'm very excited actually to see the contrast between all of this that I know from loving gardens and seeing the more wild spaces you've been telling me about that are being created and seeing how that kind of comes together.
Yeah, well, it is my favourite part of the garden, if I'm honest. I love it all, but when you round that corner and you go into a very different garden.
Oh, that's got an impressive cedar of Lebanon.
It really is an amazing tree, isn't it?
Wow.
And there's quite a story behind it as well. These were here when the second Lord Aberconway was planning to build his terraces because his grandfather, Henry Potchin, had planted them in 1874.
Oh, wow.
Now, they were quite mature trees and he didn't want to remove them. But ideally, if you're building a set of a terrace in front of your house, you want your terrace right in front of your house.
Yeah.
So he set the terrace over to one side, and he incorporated these two trees.
Wow. There's
As pictures.
1870.
Well, Henry Potchin bought Bodnant in 1874.
Okay.
And I think there's a plaque on that tree over there that says planted in 1875. So it was one of the first few things that he did, was plant pine trees, Lebanon, these cedars of Lebanon.
So that, yeah, I mean, they are really... Actually, it's interesting to me because their size denotes a much bigger scale tree in terms of years of growth if they were in their natural habitat. So it just goes to show how special the microclimate here is to produce that effect. They really are incredible trees.
This is the Laburnum Archway.
And this is the longest laburnum arch in the whole of the British Isles, apparently.
I believe so.
I mean, it must be spectacular when it's completely out.
It's just starting to come. You can see a few racemes in flower now.
Yes. And what I'm hoping to find here is one of the introductions that were at the latter stages of these amazing plant hunters. So in 1925, Henry Comber brought a lot of plants, but 3 plants still exist, and they're along the wall that runs at the side of us, and one of them is Crenodendron, but it's a particular species. Okay, when they say on the wall, it's kind of hidden, but here it is. And this is the only one in the garden. It's incredibly rare, Crenodendron patigua, and this is the actual plant introduced by Comber in 1925, and Lord Aberconway paid for this trip. It was called the Andes Syndicate. They went off, they brought plants back. It makes the basis of 2 national collections of plants, some of which are here, but this unassuming little evergreen bush is really, really exciting. I'm really pleased to have seen that.
I've walked past it so many times, Paul, so thank you for being so enthusiastic about it. I'll incorporate it in my tours.
I mean, it's just like touching a little bit of plant history.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's incredible to me.
Which way would you like to go? Down this way?
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely that way.
This is more appealing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Following the stream down.
Well, this really is a beautiful space.
You noticed all the wildflowers?
I saw 1 or 2.
We don't call them weeds, they're wildflowers, and they're everywhere here. We've seen bluebells. This white one is, you know it, I'm sure, is wild garlic. Have you tried it? You probably have, but I'm going to get you to taste it.
No, I never have actually.
So it's not the best time for wild garlic. It's better before the flowers. It gets a bit bitter when it's got a flower on it.
Okay. Well, I feel it's only fair. I made you eat something earlier, so it's like payback.
There we are. Let's find you a nice green leaf.
Okay, thank you.
It's quite strong at this time of year. I pick the flowers and put them in a salad.
Oh, it's actually quite tasty.
You like it?
Yeah.
Great breath afterwards.
Oh, no. It's actually really...
Very garlicky, eh?
Yeah, like garlicky with like a spring oniony...
The flowers are lovely. I prefer the flowers myself at this time, when it's like that.
Oh, I'll take a flower.
There you go, there's a flower.
Thank you.
All free.
Oh yeah, that is good.
And looks pretty as well in a salad. With a bit of woodruff, maybe.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. I've tasted something new today. Well, I'm glad we walked around to here because that really is very, very dramatic and beautiful.
Yeah, and they've done a lot of work on this particular part of the garden. Seem to have opened it up more.
And this is all a natural stream that flows down.
This is all water running off a Welsh hillside. You know, we have high rainfall in Wales, in case you didn't know. But people do ask me about pumping systems, and I say, no, it's just our rain.
So if this is natural, what kind of wildlife is kind of here?
Well, on the river you'll see dippers, the little bird that sort of like walks underwater,
Oh, yeah.
turning over stones looking for things. But really exciting, the big river Conway, there are otters, and the otters were very close to the saltwater influence. In fact, otters come into the garden.
Oh, wow.
But so do mink. I have seen mink in here actually.
Okay.
But otters, partial to fish, as we all know. So there's no fish in those decorative ponds, ornamental ponds anymore.
This is Polygonatum, Solomon's seal. Now, it's a really good garden plant, actually. Flowers, as you can see, about this time of year, late spring, early summer. Now, gardeners love it, but more interestingly, for me, this is the plant which makes a staple drink in South Korea. So instead of drinking camellia, the basically black tea that we all know that would have arrived there thanks to Chinese influence, the traditional drink in North Korea is the root of the Polygonatum, and it makes a really earthy and quite delicious tea that you can drink with lots of health benefits. Those are cardiocrinum, aren't they?
They are. They absolutely are, yep. That one's flowered.
Because it is interesting how colour particularly triggers the brain in a way that we can't control. So for argument's sake, lots of people in garden design put green and white around areas they think they're not going to spend time in. But those are precisely the colours where our brain is resting. So we're naturally drawn to them. And lots of vibrant colours really trigger the brain to be active. So often if you sit in a very colourful garden, it's not a restful experience and you can't quite understand why. So the tree that we're looking for has one of the most remarkable histories. The one that's here, planted in Bodnant, is one of the first to arrive in the countries, and it was engineered through a well-known nursery called the Vish nursery that had the most enormous list in the 19th century of the most exotic plants. The tree in question was brought here by Ernest Wilson, and it is an absolutely magnificent example of the handkerchief tree. And that's to say that at this time of year, the tree looks like it's covered in hundreds, if not thousands, of handkerchiefs, which are actually the bracts of the flowers. And its Latin name is Davidia involucrata.
Quite breathtaking, isn't it?
This really is the most amazing
breathtaking
valley, I think. Yeah.
Well, this is a textbook example of a U-shaped valley. I'm surprised we haven't seen a coachload of school children here actually with clipboards studying it on a geography field trip. And it's in this valley, Charles Darwin, he came here, he made 2 trips to Wales actually in the mid-19th century. And he stood here on his first trip with his mentor, Adam Sedgwick, and they looked at each other at this valley and they both concluded this could not possibly have been shaped by the river. It's too small.
Yeah, and in fact, had there been a river, where would it have come from? You wouldn't have tumbled this way, so...
Well, there's a tiny river, but what's shaped this and gouged this out is the glacier, or the glacier, however you want to say it. It's shaped it into this trough, this U-shaped valley. So these are miniature Alps, really, made in the same way as the Alps or the Rockies.
And being here kind of really developed that idea for him that we've now kind of taken as the obvious.
Yeah.
And what kind of wild plants, would be here more than the kind of heather that we can see?
Well, it's interesting. The glacier melted around about 10,000 years ago, and it left behind plants from that period.
Oh,
They're
really?
pretty rare,
Uh-huh.
But you probably have heard of one of them, the Snowdon lily.
Yes.
We're not going to see it on this visit. It's, you know, in very, very high, inaccessible ledges.
Well, you're saying that, don't tempt me.
I know, I can see you getting a bit of an idea going here now. And saxifrages and several plants that are kind of like they're hangovers from the period of glaciation. So it will be interesting to watch what happens to these plants as the climate warms up.
Aren't these communities just fascinating, like colonising this rock?
It's incredible, isn't it, really? It's a bit like it's a miniature garden, isn't it, in its own right. They're really beautiful, aren't they? And did you know Beatrix Potter, she wasn't just a writer, she was a bit of an amateur scientist as well. And she posed a theory as to what a lichen was. It's a symbiotic relationship, basically, a lichen. And she was totally poo-hooed by the men scientists around her.
Yeah.
She was actually proved correct. It is a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, I hope she was proved correct in her lifetime, just for a little bit of like, yes, I did know.
Satisfaction, yeah.
Yeah, well, either way, I mean, she's right, and they are very beautiful. Well, we couldn't come to North Wales without talking about one of Wales' biggest exports, and that really is slate. Now, here at Penrith is one of the most unique slate mines in the world, because it's from here that the premium quality slate was shipped around the world to tile all of the government buildings of the old British Empire. So for argument's sake, in Australia and in Canada, those Victorian and Edwardian buildings will all have Welsh slate roofs, because it really was the best in the world. In order to get that slate, however, came a quite large landscape cost. So 80% of what was extracted from underground ended up above ground in these vast slate hips. Now, the thing is, for 100 years, this has sat here and formed part of the landscape, and that is now included in the UNESCO heritage site. But something quite remarkable has happened over that time, and if you look carefully across these tips, what you'll see is colonising epiphytes, bryophytes, ferns, and all the things that need new soil to start. So virgin soil is here through the slate, and from that, trees and shrubs are recolonising and taking back over. But it really is one of the most remarkable historical sites of Wales.
Well, Paul, we've been to Bethesda, we've visited the slate tips, we've seen the working quarry, Penryn Quarry in Bethesda. A handful of men made their fortunes from the slate industry, and with that fortune, they built themselves magnificent properties.
Very big houses.
Like Penryn Castle.
And really, those few made their fortunes on the backs of very, very many.
That's very true.
And did all of his money come from slate?
No, we say his money came from the 3 S's, slate being one of them, sugar and slavery in the West Indies being the other two. So there's a whole story there to be told as well.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? 'Cause in one way, it's really impressive. The building is kind of Norman in style. Like you said, it was a neo-Norman, so it's built in the Norman style. Think the Tower of London, the rounded arches, the big keep. And in fact, that's quite interesting. You mentioned the Tower of London, because the roof slates of that come from Penryn. So that's
another connection.
That's quite interesting. But I mean, imagine you make enough money to build something this enormous and magnificent, and then you get that extraordinary view, which I can only imagine gets better as we go up and up the hill.
I mean, he chose the perfect place, really, because from here he can see his land holdings, he can see his quarries, but he can also see the beautiful landscape of the Menai Strait, the hills of Snowdonia, the island of Anglesey. I mean, it's a magnificent position for property.
Let's keep going to have a look.
Well, we've left behind all that open vistas of the Menai Strait and the mountains. This is a nice little place to come to, just to sort of get out of the wind, sort of chill out in the walled garden.
Walled garden. Now, this sounds a lot more like my cup of tea. I mean, the castle is impressive, but what I like is a garden and some plants. Well, there definitely looks like there's quite a lot to see here and a lot of shrubs. Well, it's really interesting to me walking around this walled garden because we think of them as like productive spaces for vegetables, soft and top fruit. But looking at the size of things like this pyrus next to us and the trees within the garden, they are really actually amongst the original plantings you would suggest by their age. Which says to me this was always meant as a kind of like enclosed pleasure garden over a vegetable space.
I think you're right there, because there's also no enclosing wall down at this far end.
One of the things which really should come as no surprise to me is that here Lord Penrith was in that whole club of people wanting to ensure that they had the latest plant specimens. So just like at Bodnant, behind me there is an enormous Davidia involucrata from China, probably amongst that very first group of plants that came. And then this side of me, just like we saw in Dublin, is an enormous, I mean incredible Drumis winteri, again probably amongst those really early introductions. And it really does say to me there's a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, making sure everybody's got the latest plant. One of the things that fascinates me about plants is why they do things. So we've got plants that we've bred and we've made them do something, but Davidia involucrata is completely natural to China. It's kind of evolved to do this. And if you look, the flower is dead in the center and it's wind pollinated, so it's not needing insects to do any work for it. And yet it's developed these bracts distinctly, one much longer than the other. And I just wonder, because we don't know, what the tree decided it needed those bracts for. Whatever it did them for, it's still incredibly beautiful.
This might interest you, Paul.
Yeah.
Does it remind you of something?
Well, it really does. I mean, we're walking through a large tunnel, which is very reminiscent of the laburnum at Bodnant. But in fact, instead of that, we're looking at fuchsia. I don't think I've ever seen such a long tunnel, and they are really old plants. And it must look magical in summer when they're all like fluttering above your heads like little butterflies. It really does suggest to me that they were obviously inspired by each other, to put it generously. Oh wow, I mean that is a planting of Gunnera.
So we're in this forest of Gunnera.
Pretty magnificent, isn't it?
It feels prehistoric. You expect to see a dinosaur walk on through.
Yeah.
And it is. It's been around since prehistory. I mean, it's found in the fossil form. It's actually a notifiable weed now in the UK.
So this is banned?
It's banned. You can't buy this in a garden centre. It's incredibly invasive, especially in wet, boggy areas. You've been to Ireland. I mean, it's by the sides of the road throughout a lot of the peat bogs of Ireland.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So realistically, we're only going to, hopefully in the future, see it in big gardens and places where it already is existing.
And can be kept contained. But it probably has got some uses.
Yeah, very definitely. So where it's escaped into the wild and we want to control it, we could just dig it up, but I think we could with something slightly more exciting. So in South America, where this is native, its traditional use is to be cut, peel this bark, bark
carefully,
stem, carefully, and basically it's chopped up and it's eaten raw in a salad. It's supposed to be really, really good for digestive complaints. So I guess if you see an escapee and you fancy a nibble, that's the thing to have a go on.
Good tip.
Well, thank you so much for today, Donna. I have had such an inspirational time. It's a childhood dream, really, to spend time with another person who's passionate about the landscape. I loved going back to Bodnant, sharing that with you, and you showing me new things. This castle is really rather impressive. It doesn't really have enough words to justify what's going on here in many, many ways. And the garden that we've looked at that associates with it just reminds me of the interconnectivity and the way that plants have all spoken to each other, just like finding somebody like you that shared so much passion is such a joy.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Paul, honestly, share my little corner of North Wales with you.
Well, that really was the most exciting day. We've been to some extraordinary places, and all of that exercise has really given me a brilliant excuse to sit here with a book and indulge a little bit, because I think I really have earned it. Welcome to Liverpool. This is a spectacular garden here, isn't it? There is a wealth of hidden secrets, beautiful gardens and green spaces that I am really excited to be sharing with you.